In a world ravaged by food scarcity, where the sun hung low in the sky, casting a pallid light over crumbling cities, Mia Torres navigated the dark alleys of a dystopian society. The stench of decay lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the desperation that had gripped the populace. Once vibrant neighborhoods lay in ruins, their inhabitants reduced to mere shadows of their former selves, scavenging for scraps in the remnants of what was once a thriving civilization. Mia, a slender figure with raven black hair that fell in disheveled waves around her gaunt face, had become a haunting presence in this bleak landscape. Her deep-set brown eyes, once filled with dreams of artistic expression, now reflected the weight of survival. She was known for her strikingly realistic paintings of food, each canvas a vivid portrayal of the delicacies that had become mere memories for most. The colors danced with life: crimson strawberries, golden pastries, and rich, velvety chocolates, each stroke of her brush a cruel reminder of what was lost. But beneath the surface of her artistry lay a grotesque secret. Mia had turned to the black market, a treacherous underworld where human flesh was traded like currency. Her talent for capturing the essence of food on canvas had caught the attention of a ruthless dealer named Victor, a man with cold, calculating eyes and a penchant for violence. In exchange for her paintings, Victor supplied her with the flesh of the deceased, bodies discarded by a society that deemed them expendable. As she worked in her dimly lit studio, the walls adorned with her grotesque masterpieces, Mia felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. Each brushstroke was a reminder of the lives she had consumed, the faces of the fallen haunting her thoughts. The vibrant reds of her paintings were tinged with the knowledge of their origin, the irony of beauty born from horror gnawing at her conscience. She often found herself staring into the depths of her creations, searching for a semblance of redemption, but finding only despair. Her sister, Lila, was the only light in Mia's dark existence. A fragile girl with a mop of curly hair and bright blue eyes, Lila had fallen ill in the midst of the food crisis. The sickness had crept in like a thief in the night, stealing her vitality and leaving her pale and weak. Mia's heart ached at the sight of her sister, a constant reminder of the stakes at play. Desperation clawed at her insides, pushing her deeper into the abyss of her dark trade. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson hue across the sky, Mia received a message from Victor. He wanted her to create a series of paintings for an elite gala, a gathering of the wealthy who reveled in their status while the rest of the world starved. The thought of showcasing her work to the very people who profited from the suffering of others filled her with a mixture of dread and determination. She needed the money to buy medicine for Lila, and the opportunity was too tempting to refuse. As she painted late into the night, the brush gliding over the canvas with an almost manic fervor, Mia's mind raced. The colors swirled around her, a cacophony of reds and greens that mirrored the turmoil within. She could hear the whispers of the dead, their voices echoing in her mind, urging her to stop, to turn away from this path of destruction. But the thought of losing Lila propelled her forward, each stroke a desperate plea for survival. The night of the gala arrived, and Mia stood before her creations, a mixture of pride and revulsion swirling within her. The paintings, vibrant and alluring, were adorned with the flesh of the forgotten, their beauty a stark contrast to the horror they represented. As the elite filtered into the room, their laughter ringing hollow against the backdrop of her art, Mia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Victor, dressed in a tailored suit that accentuated his imposing figure, stood beside her, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "They'll love it," he said, his voice smooth like silk, but laced with an underlying threat. "Just remember, Mia, this is your ticket to freedom. Don't let guilt get in the way." As the night wore on, Mia watched the wealthy patrons admire her work, their faces illuminated by the flickering candlelight. They marveled at the textures, the lifelike representations of food that seemed to leap off the canvas. But behind their admiration lay a twisted sense of entitlement, a detachment from the suffering that fueled her creations. With each passing moment, Mia's guilt deepened, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. She could almost hear Lila's voice, soft and pleading, urging her to stop this madness. But the thought of her sister's suffering drove her to the brink of insanity. She needed to keep painting, to keep feeding this monstrous cycle, if only to save the one person who mattered most. As the gala reached its climax, Mia's heart raced with anxiety. She felt the walls closing in, the laughter of the elite morphing into a cacophony of mockery. Suddenly, a figure stepped forward from the crowd, a journalist named Clara, known for her fierce dedication to exposing the truth. Clara's piercing gaze locked onto Mia, and in that moment, the world around them faded away. "You," Clara said, her voice steady but filled with intensity. "You know what you're doing is wrong. You're feeding a system that thrives on suffering." Mia's heart raced as she struggled to maintain her composure. "I do what I must to survive," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara stepped closer, her expression softening. "But at what cost? You're not just painting, you're complicit in this horror. You can still change things, Mia. You can expose the truth." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Mia felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, but the fear of losing everything held her back. She glanced at Victor, who watched the exchange with a predatory smile, his presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking in the shadows. In that moment of uncertainty, the gala erupted into chaos. A group of protesters armed with signs and banners stormed the venue, shouting for justice and demanding an end to the black market trade that had ensnared so many. The elite recoiled in horror, their laughter replaced by screams of indignation. Mia's heart raced as she watched the scene unfold. The protesters, fueled by anger and desperation, were fighting against the very system that had forced her into this dark existence. In a moment of clarity, she realized that she could no longer hide behind her art. She had to choose a side. With trembling hands, Mia stepped forward, her voice rising above the chaos. "Listen to them," she cried, her words laced with urgency. "They are the ones who suffer while we indulge in our luxuries. The government has been hoarding food supplies, using this crisis to control us." Gasps filled the room as the truth spilled from her lips. The elite turned their attention to her, their expressions shifting from shock to anger. Victor's face twisted in fury, his eyes narrowing as he stepped toward her, but she stood her ground. "I won't be a part of this any longer," Mia declared, her voice unwavering. "I will use my art to expose the truth. I will show the world what is really happening." As the protesters surged forward, Mia felt a rush of adrenaline. She grabbed a paintbrush from her easel, dipping it into the vibrant red paint that had once represented beauty, but now symbolized the blood of the innocent. With each stroke, she painted a mural on the wall, a powerful depiction of the suffering inflicted upon the masses. The colors blended together, a chaotic swirl of reds and blacks, symbolizing the pain and despair of a world on the brink of collapse. The crowd watched in awe as Mia poured her heart into the canvas, her guilt transforming into a fierce determination. But as the final strokes fell into place, a sudden silence enveloped the room. Mia stepped back, breathless, and the mural stood before them, a haunting representation of the truth, raw and unfiltered. The faces of the forgotten stared back at the elite, their eyes filled with anguish and despair. In that moment, Mia felt a sense of liberation. She had shed the weight of her guilt and embraced the power of her art. But as the crowd erupted into applause, a chilling realization washed over her. The elite would never accept the truth. They would do anything to maintain their grip on power. Victor's voice cut through the applause like a knife. "You think this will change anything? You think they'll care?" His laughter echoed in the hall, a cruel reminder of the darkness that still lurked. Mia's heart sank as she realized the truth of his words. The elite would not be swayed by her art. They would retaliate. The revolution she had hoped for would be met with violence and oppression. As the chaos unfolded around her, Mia felt a sense of dread creeping in. She had exposed the truth, but at what cost? The government would not let her live to tell the tale. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut, and she turned to Clara, desperation etched on her face. "We have to get out of here," she shouted, but the words barely left her lips before the doors burst open and armed guards stormed in. The crowd panicked, scattering in all directions as the guards began to apprehend anyone associated with the protest. Mia's heart raced as she searched for Lila in the chaos, the thought of her sister's safety driving her forward. But as she pushed through the throng, she felt a hand grip her arm, pulling her back. It was Victor, his expression twisted with rage. "You think you can just walk away from this?" he snarled, his grip tightening. Mia's mind raced, the fear of losing everything flooding her senses. In a moment of desperation, she reached for the paintbrush still clutched in her hand and plunged it into Victor's side. The blade pierced through flesh, and a look of shock crossed his face as he stumbled back, blood spilling onto the floor. The world around her faded into chaos as Mia fought her way through the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the shouts of the guards, the cries of the protesters, and the sound of her own breath echoing in her ears. As she burst through the exit, the cool night air hit her like a wave, and she ran, driven by the need to survive. But the weight of her actions hung heavy on her conscience. She had become a monster in her quest for survival, and now there was no turning back. In the days that followed, Mia became a fugitive, her name whispered in the shadows. The government launched a manhunt, determined to silence her and anyone who dared to challenge their authority. But Mia was not alone. The truth she had painted ignited a spark of rebellion among the people, and soon whispers of a revolution spread like wildfire. Mia watched from the sidelines as protests erupted across the city, the people rising against their oppressors. But as she witnessed the chaos unfold, a sense of dread settled in her stomach. The government would retaliate, and the bloodshed would only deepen. In her heart, Mia knew that she would never escape the consequences of her actions. The faces of the fallen haunted her dreams, their voices echoing in her mind. She had traded her soul for survival, and now the weight of that choice threatened to consume her. As the revolution raged on, Mia found herself standing in front of her mural once more, the vibrant colors now dulled by the passage of time. The faces of the forgotten stared back at her, their expressions a haunting reminder of the lives she had taken. In that moment, Mia understood the true cost of her art. It was not just a means of survival. It was a reflection of the darkness that resided within her. And as the world crumbled around her, she knew that she would forever be marked by the choices she had made. With a heavy heart, Mia picked up her brush once more, determined to paint a final masterpiece, a tribute to the lives lost in her pursuit of survival. As the colors flowed onto the canvas, she poured her guilt, her pain, and her sorrow into each stroke, creating a haunting depiction of a world torn apart by greed and desperation. But as the final stroke fell into place, a chilling realization washed over her. The revolution she had hoped for would not bring salvation. It would only lead to more bloodshed. And in that moment, Mia understood that the true horror lay not in the flesh she had consumed, but in the darkness that resided within the human soul. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the city, Mia stepped back from her canvas, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. She had become a part of the very darkness she sought to expose, and now there was no escape. In a world where survival came at a cost, Mia Torres had become the hungry artist, forever trapped in a cycle of horror and despair, her art a reflection of the twisted reality she had created. And as the echoes of the fallen whispered in her ears, she knew that the true price of survival was a burden she would carry for eternity.